All right, you might have heard Ontario is introducing legislation that aims to close the gender wage gap in the province.
In the UK, a similar measure is already making waves among women in the public and private sectors. Women from the BBC to Barclays are finally seeing firsthand how their salaries stack up against their male counterparts.
The Pay Transparency Act would force employers to state the salary in public job postings and track and report gaps in pay between male and female employees. But will it be enough? Joining us is Tanya van Biesen. She's the Executive Director of Catalyst Canada, a global nonprofit working to accelerate progress for women in the workplace. Good to have you here.
Thank you. Good to be here.
All right. How will this legislation make a difference?
So first of all, I think it's a really positive step because we need transparency. And I am disappointed that we had to get to legislation to fix this gender wage gap. But the fact of the matter is we made progress through the 80s and then we've just about stalled out on making progress.
So who will be under this legislation? Is this for new job postings going up? Is it retroactive?
Yeah, so first of all, it starts only with provincial employees. That's the starting point. And at some point, the province aims to roll it out to larger companies or 250 employees and above. I think it's on a go-forward basis, not retroactive.
And what about the federal legislation that we saw in this last budget where there was supposed to be room for that to happen? How is the Ontario legislation different?
So the feds are focusing on federal employees, the province is focusing on provincial employees and companies based in Ontario.
All right, so then what else needs to be done other than measures like this of making it transparent, saying this is the stated salary and we're going to track and make sure that it's equal for both?
Yeah, so I think the fact that employers can no longer, hiring managers can no longer ask what someone makes in their current job is really important. I'll take myself as an example. My husband and I started in the same job at the same time with exactly the same degree, and he was offered 10% more than I was. Now, I didn't know that at the time, but we figured that out later in life. Neither of us negotiated, but he was just offered 10% more than I was. So if that happens and gets compounded over time, you can see the impact that that has on women. So that, I think, is critically important. Shifting gears, the other thing that's going to get women and keep women in the workforce and close this gender wage gap is childcare, childcare, childcare.
What would you like to see done? What kind of legislation would you like to see happen to make that work? What would that look like?
So I think what Ontario needs is more affordable, more accessible childcare. We need more childcare spaces for women to come into and stay in the workforce.
You have more, explain the correlation for people between childcare and wage gap.
Well, the part of the wage gap is that women don't have access to the same. We've got a couple of things at play. We've got jobs that are not being valued the same for men and women, so that's a gap that's going to hopefully be closed by this legislation. We've also got women who are opting out of the workforce, and so they're not actually in there working, or they're taking significant time out to take care of their children, and therefore that sets them back from a gender gap or from a wage gap perspective. So all of these things have to work together in order to close this gap.
All right, good to have you here.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.